This is Steve Hewlett from balancedfitlifestyles.com, and today, again, this is carrying on from another video that we had where we were talking about how our body processes processed food, and when it goes to the liver and how the liver turns much of processed food with sugar and high fructose corn syrup, it turns it straight into triglycerides, into fat. And we also talked about how there are different types of LDLs. There's good LDLs and there's bad LDLs. And the good LDLs are these large buoyant LDLs, and then the bad ones are these small dense LDLs. And if you want to know more about that, I've got a quick little 5-minute video that talks about that. But today what we're going to talk about is what happens to this fat after it's being produced in our liver. And this is something that's going to be really important because this is a process we talked about in another video where really it takes about 20 to 30 years in general for our bodies, when we constantly eat poor nutrition and our bodies constantly turn this nutrition into fat because it's trying to store it for fasting energy, what it does is it goes and it starts storing it in all of our subcutaneous fat cells. And this is perfectly normal. This is what it's supposed to do for our fasting glucose. And that's what our body does. So we take in this processed food and our liver turns that into fat, and then it puts it into these LDLs, or it puts it in these LDLs, and it floats it all around our body. And that's what our body does. It floats around, and it's looking for these fat cells in our body because this is where it's going to store the fat. And this is why it takes 20 to 30 years, because we have lots of this subcutaneous fat cells all over our body. So these little LDLs, and I kind of explained to them like they're little boats. These are boats where you have, in the liver, you have cholesterol and you have triglycerides. And these are the two lipids that we have in our bodies. You put those together like the cargo of a ship, and then you wrap this around a protein, and that's called so the fat is called lipids, and the protein is protein, so it's called lipoprotein. And that's where you get your LDLs, that when you go to your doctor to get your cholesterol checked, and they talk about your LDLs, that's your low-density lipoproteins. And that's this fat and this protein combination. And the reason your body makes those is because it's trying to put the fat out into your bloodstream to store around and put it in these fat cells. So this is what the body does for 20 to 30 years until all of a sudden it starts floating around the bloodstream and it goes to find one of these fat cells, and when it gets there, it finds out that your fat cells are already stuffed. And this is what happens after 20 to 30 years of constantly filling and filling your fat cells and never allowing it time to burn that fasting energy off. So when we eat every 2-3 hours and we're eating all this processed food that gets turned mainly into fat, all we're doing is continuously stuffing our fat cells, and we never give our bodies a chance to burn that off. And we'll talk about that later. And it's not by increasing activity. Exercise is fantastic. I firmly believe in exercise for all kinds of wonderful reasons that it does for your body and for your mind and everything. But as far as losing weight, that's not really the way you're going to be able to do it. And I talked about that in another video when we talked about your basal metabolism and metabolic rate. However, in here what happens is when these LDLs are floating around your body trying to put fat into these fat cells, and it comes across these fat cells that are already stuffed, the only thing your body knows to do is to turn right around and go right back to where the fat's being produced in the first place, which means it goes back to the liver. And this is when you start getting the non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. And this is what's really bad, because once you get this fatty liver, this fat's all over your liver, then that's all of a sudden, that's going to start causing liver damage. And your liver isn't going to function the way it's supposed to. And then the more we start storing fat around all our visceral organs, which we were never supposed to store fat around, but now there's nowhere else to put it because all our subcutaneous tissues are filled. Now we end up with a fatty pancreas. And a fatty pancreas is bad because what that does is now this starts making it where our beta cells, which is what produce insulin, those start becoming dysfunctional. And now we can't produce enough insulin anymore either. And so now our blood glucoses go high. And this whole circle just gets worse and worse and worse. So now our blood glucose levels are high, our fat levels are high, our triglyceride levels are high, and this is when we have all the organ damage that we have and the poor quality of life. And this all starts from the exact same thing. It all starts from the food that we put in our mouths. And when we put high processed food, high sugar, high fructose corn syrup, and high these trans fats, and we keep putting this stuff into our mouths, we keep producing more and more fat, and it starts causing damage to all of our organs. So the key is switch over to proper nutrition. This means no more man-made food. Everything you put in your mouth should be God-made food. It should be, if it was never alive to begin with, we probably shouldn't be putting that in mouths. If you have to read a label to see whether it's good for you or not, chances are it's not, and you shouldn't be putting it in your mouths. So again, we're going to have several videos to kind of explain this, but this is just the one that talks about fat and how fat gets circulated around our bodies. So I hope this helped, and hope to see you soon.